What's up? Welcome to episode number 132 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choate. If you are new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, most often comedians and other entertainment types, creative types about their lives and careers. The conversation is casual, but I also ask everyone to highlight the people they love, who they admire, who've influenced them, inspired them, or supported them. For more, check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. It's at People We Love Podcast on Instagram. Please subscribe to the show on YouTube, on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. That is appreciated, as are 5-star positive reviews on Apple Podcasts. Please give those. Those are helpful as well. I'm on Instagram, on Twitter, at Adam Choate, if you want to follow me. I also have a short film that's online and available now. It's a dystopian psychological satire. I think you guys will appreciate it. If you haven't checked it out already, please do that. It's at theeditedmovie.com. That's theeditedmovie.com. It's also on my personal YouTube page, but it's embedded at the website. It's about 10 minutes long. I think you guys will get a kick out of that. And my other podcast is Tedeschi Trucks Podcast, all about the 12-piece blues rock soul powerhouse band Tedeschi Trucks Podcast. Tedeschi Trucks Band. Tedeschi Trucks Podcast is the Instagram handle. TEDESCHI Trucks Podcast. Check that out. But for today's episode of this show, we have today's guest. It's welder, writer, musician, activist, and more, Zach Kincaid. Northern California's own, tells me all about growing up in the city of Woodland. Zach comes from a special family of tough-minded people who all loved reading and music. A family man himself with a wife and kids these days, we cover a lot. Zach is active in the Libertarian Party, and his intellectual curiosity and desire and value for freedom and justice certainly comes from his strong family. So let's just do this one. Here's Zach Kincaid. Okay, so it's good to see you today, Zach Kincaid. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, for sure, man. I was waiting for you. You were taking a smoke. How you holding up during whatever year this is?
So far so good. It hasn't been too out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
My life really hasn't changed for the last few years, other than I don't get to play music as often as I used to.
Yeah, we'll get into that stuff for sure. You say so far so good, but we're getting towards, I guess, the end of the year, only a couple of months left. So far so good means we're, with only, we've experienced most of the year. So like that's a good thing. That's positive.
Right. Yeah, we're not in nuclear war, and the dollar isn't hyperinflated completely yet. So
yeah,
I would say so far so good.
Yet is the key word. Well, do you want a slow death by inflation, or you want a quick one by nuclear war? Pick your poison.
Right. I don't know.
Oh man, we're taking it to a dark place right away, but that's okay. And let's why don't we get into it? You could tell me about your background and your life. I kind of ask people for their even like earliest memories, what jumps out at them, and even when they're like 3, 4, 5 years old. I'll let you, tell me even sounds or images that jump out at you, and tell me about kind of like maybe your family and where you grew up, and we'll get into it a little bit.
All right, sounds good. I'm from Northern California. I live in Woodland. We're just northwest, I guess, of Sacramento. I was born here. I didn't graduate from high school here. I lived in Yuba City for a while, but live here as an adult. I tried to move out of this place a bunch of times, and I always end up back. So we finally just gave up and bought a house.
That's funny. But, it's home. Something about where you are is home. I mean, home is home. Is there something to be said for that?
Oh, I would completely. But no, so like I've always been into music, country music specifically. I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my great grandmother, who listened to a lot of like really old country. And probably like you're talking about early memories. First concert I remember being at was Chris Ledoux concert. Chris Ledoux was like huge rodeo cowboy singer. So I was like, I don't know. It was the thing back in the day.
How old were you?
And like 4 or 5. So
did you go with your grandmother to this concert?
No.
Did you go with your grandmother?
I was with my mom.
with your mom. So your mom liked country music,
Yeah.
and your grandmother and your great grandmother all love country music.
Yeah. Well, my mom is more into like 70s singer-songwriter stuff, like Jackson Brown, um, James Taylor, that kind of stuff, Carole
Hmm.
King, whatever. But like she always had like a soft spot for the traditional country. I think because that's what, like, her dad was a Willie Nelson fan, like that kind of stuff. Like once you're around that, it's kind of hard to shake it off.
Yeah. So music was
Uh,
music always playing around the house, or like was that a big part of your early childhood? It sounds like it,
oh
or
yeah, oh yeah. And like with my mom's family, every holiday, the soundtrack to the movie The Big Chill was playing. Like that was like always the thing.
that's more like my speed right there. That's where I kind of like all the Motown and this classic
Right.
rock and the oldies and all that stuff that makes you feel good. Soul music is kind of really what that
Mm-hmm.
is. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very, very cool stuff. Did you have siblings, or do you have siblings?
So I'm an only child, but I have a stepbrother who's basically my age, and then I have another stepbrother who's about 10 years older than me, and a stepsister who's a little older than him.
I got you. So
Uh,
but you grew up mostly without siblings. Am I following that?
yeah, yeah. Like I lived with my mom after my parents were divorced, and I was the only kid in the house because my stepbrother was so much older.
Yeah,
And then after she got remarried, and then my when my dad got remarried, my stepbrother, like, they lived in Woodland, and we lived in Yuba City, so I just like we were siblings on the weekends. So
does everybody for the most part get along with, maybe things times were not ideal, obviously at some points, but
yeah,
for the most
no, no,
part, is it
actually,
a
for
good family you're part of?
yeah, yeah, no, for a divorced family, like, we pretty much have it made. All my parents all get along. Um, Me and all my step siblings all get along.
Very cool. That's
We
I'm
got
glad.
lucky.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's important, and that's cool. So only child, and growing up with your mom, what kind of kid were you in like elementary school? Like, were you a good student? Were you already playing music, into music? What do you remember about like elementary
Um,
school, Zach?
so I played the violin in elementary school. Um, like I said, music was always kind of a big deal. Um, but no, I was never really a good student. I was always busy doing something else. I was a like avid reader as a child, even really really young. So I was usually doodling or reading a book when I was supposed to be doing something in class.
It's funny. I talk to a lot of people on this podcast and other on my Tedeschi Trucks podcast about music, and a lot of comedians and musicians and creative types have similar story, where they're just kind of like creative people, smart people, and even readers and writers, but don't show that much of an interest in the curriculum per se. And I get that. And I think that's cool. I like that.
Sometimes you need to like pursue your own interests, take yourself seriously.
Yeah.
Like what they're trying to teach you sometimes just isn't what you need. I don't
I
know.
think I think you're being generous. I think that might be the case more often than not, or overall. Certainly, we may talk more about that
Uh,
that later for sure. What about your grandmother and your great grandmother? Having a great grandmother in your life, that's not very common. Like, how long was she? You're gonna be like, she's still alive. She's 110
no,
now.
unfortunately not. No, she lived until she was 92. She was around for a long time. So my great grandparents moved over to California from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. They ended up in like the Madera, Bakersfield area in like 1936, literally with one dime left. My great grandmother used to talk about their one thin dime. But they like left Oklahoma with a car and a bunch of shit, and then they got here, and like all they had left was some pocket change. And they spent their first night in California on the bench in a barber shop in Bakersfield. So just
They
crazy.
they spent what? Wait, they did what?
Their first night in California, they didn't know anybody. They had no place to go, no money, and a barber let them sleep on their bench.
I got it the first night.
Yeah, first night, and then they met up with their family that had already moved over here.
I got you.
All
What?
that, but
This was your your
my
great
great
grand
grandmother,
your great
yeah,
what was her name?
Martha,
Martha. And what was your great
yeah,
grandfather's name? You know,
Royal,
Royal, Martha and Royal.
yeah.
And that's on your mom's side or
That
your
was my mom. Yeah,
that
that's my mom's grandmother.
was your
Yeah.
mom's side. So she lived to be 92. And how old was she? How old were you when she passed? If you
So it was the year I got married. I was, I don't know, to be honest with you, 25 or 26 maybe.
if your wife listens, she might not. Damn that, but that I'm forgetting my joke about you not remembering that
Yeah.
the exact date. But the fact that you were in your mid-20s and your great grandmother was alive, that's incredible. Because I was about to ask you, tell me something about your great grandma you remember from when you were 6 years old. But like she was
Yeah.
around for into your adulthood, so you probably have a lot of stories or anecdotes or things that were cool about your great grandmother.
Oh yeah. No, my great grandmother and her sisters were all pretty wicked women. Uh, None of them took any shit from anybody.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
they passed it down, I
But
think. It seems like it. I would guess.
uh, but and then so my grandmother, my dad's mom. So basically my babysitters when I was a kid were my great grandmother, my mom's grandma, and then my dad's mom. And my dad's mom was born on a cattle ranch that's been my cousin still runs. That's been in the family since 1880. She was born in the house where her dad was born.
Wow.
Um, and like I said, and it's still a family run beef cattle operation. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, you guys are
Uh,
you're I don't even know what the word is. That's just I'm more I guess more of a city person, but you're for the audio listeners, you're actually in your garage sitting on a Jeep right now. Is that
oh
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I've been remodeling my garage and getting ready to restore a Jeep. And since I don't have any space left in the garage, I'm just gonna sit in the Jeep.
I
Uh,
respect all that the Jeep and all that stuff. But it's interesting at least because what I'm thinking about is like all this sort of like feminine or female influence that you had in your life, especially in your early childhood. But you were certainly with all that influence became like a real dude, as everyone could see by the beard and the Jeep and all that stuff.
yeah.
Is that
But
something you've thought
that's
about? What's up?
no, not really. A lot of the so like even my mom and my aunts, uh, like a lot of the women that I've been around in my life have all been really strong characters. And then my wife uh, and her mother, her family, they're all a bunch of strong-willed women, let's say. So kind of like the theme. I got to be masculine just to survive.
Yeah, no, but that seems like overall it's been a very positive influence on you, and you've taken on a lot of those strong characteristics and those strength of being a strong person and all that stuff. And it's not even so much about that, like maybe that about them being female. It's just like they happen to be people who were strong-willed and I guess tough. It sounds like, and you were
Right.
able to see that and observe that and internalize it. I mean, I may be inferring some of this, but that's what it seems like from at least from
Oh,
afar.
so like I made it through elementary school. Like I said, I kind of had issues paying attention. Um, they in sixth grade, they decided they had diagnosed me with ADHD, like in elementary
Oh,
school.
you're an OG
But in
because
sixth grade,
that's like, before you got in before it was cool. So you were
right? No,
real.
exactly. When it was just a problem, and they tried to they tried to medicate me if I was going to stay in class or whatever. And my mom basically told them to go fuck themselves, and started homeschooling me. So I got to avoid the medication, which I'm sure I'm the better for.
Like
I've heard a lot of, yeah, it was Ritalin back in the
Ritalin or
day.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it messed up a lot of kids. Um, so I'm kind of glad I missed that boat. But I ended up going back to high school, and then, but I didn't start playing music again until basically I was almost an adult. Uh, I was probably like 16 or 17. Uh, and a neighbor of mine was, he was in a like a punk cover band, and dude always had the coolest music playing. You know, had all the speakers, the guitars, kegerator in his garage. Like he was like, it was like the coolest thing to a teenager. You know what I mean?
He had the setup.
He had this setup, and uh, first guitar I bought was a black and white Telecaster, and all I ever learned to do on it was break strings.
Just from playing roughhousing, hard
Yeah,
metal, punk stuff.
all just like silly punk shit, but just playing rhythm guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I got an acoustic guitar, and it was like I'd play if we were having a house party, or I'd play if we were camping. And then all of a sudden it was like I play at every house party, and then I play every time we go camping, and every time we go deer hunting, and every, you know what I mean? Like it just became a thing. And I never learned how to solo or anything, but like I play pretty decent rhythm guitar
Very cool.
now. You know.
Very cool.
And
So
then
you go on.
no, I'll just ramble on and on.
No, that's good. You know, it's good that you're rambling because I was gonna steer us back into like middle school, high school, and ask what was
Yeah,
going
go
on.
for it.
Well, what I actually wanted to ask is when your mom decided on like homeschooling you versus like going to the school, was that like a traumatic thing for you to go through? Were you torn one way or the other? Were you like, I'm not, it's not normal to be homeschooled, or I want to be in school, or take me at like, what were your feelings about going through all that?
Um, no, like I was never really that against the idea. Um, it was kind of presented as a necessity. And like when you're a kid and you get told like, hey, this is what we're doing because this is what we have to do, like you kind of trust your parents, especially like if your parents haven't, you know, done anything to disprove, you know, to for you not to trust them. So like when my mom said, yeah, this is what we've got to do. Like I just assumed this is the best path.
You're a good
Um,
son. You're a good son in that
well,
sense.
like it really was like the best thing though, because my problem wasn't school at all. It was literally just being bored. And one of the years, we just found some of the old logbooks, uh, like of the curriculum, probably about a year ago, I want to say. And one of the semesters I took like 14 classes. So it was like I just needed to be busier. Like if I started fucking up, then I just needed to be busier until the point where I couldn't be in trouble.
It makes
Uh,
sense. People learn at different rates
mhm.
and are
But
interested in different amounts.
it was like the dark ages for homeschooling. Not as bad as some people had it, but I mean we're still talking about the mid to late 90s. And I mean we had the internet, but you really had to dig for that shit. There was no online curriculum, online programs, or anything like that. The cool thing was a lot of colleges like MIT were doing courses that you could take online. And you couldn't actually take the class, but they had all of the information all there. And so I got to do a lot of really, really cool stuff that I wouldn't have been exposed to if it wasn't for homeschooling. And like at one point, I was taking Latin, and I got to the point where my mom wasn't learning the Latin as fast as I was, and so I got to take Latin in summer school at Sac State one year. That was kind of cool.
That's cool. I think that you enjoy that, like, because I guess maybe most kids aren't like that enthusiastic about their education, let alone something really specific and probably challenging, like learning Latin. But I guess what big part of it is the fact that like it sounds like you and your mom, like as a team in some sense, probably steered the curriculum towards what was your interest, but also giving you a broad, but also giving you a broad enough education at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and then since reading was always such a big deal in like both my parents read a lot. And like it's like I said, it's just always been a thing that's happened. Like I don't know. Uh so like English lit and American lit were huge when I was homeschooled before I went back to public school. I like blame my anarchism on my mom sometimes because when I was in like seventh grade, I had to read Harrison Bergeron and Fahrenheit 451 and 1984 and like all the dystopia stuff, Paradise Lost, like all that stuff. And it was like, I don't know, once you see how bad things could be, even if it's just, I mean, it's all just fiction, it's all whatever, but a lot of those ideas are legitimate. And like you see something like that when you're young, it's hard to not see it as you grow older.
Yeah, you can't unsee or unknow or unlearn, like when you have such a profound shift in how you view the world. We'll get into your, like, I guess how you became a libertarian or an anarchist or however you describe yourself. Was it like a gradual thing
Yeah.
where like the fiction books like sort of steered you in that direction? Was it Ron Paul later on? Was it a moment? Was it a political event? What kind of? And we'll jump around a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, it was the idea of like in Harrison Bergeron, it's like forced equality, forced equity by bringing everyone else down to make everyone equal. Like that, all that shit's so frightening. And then you get into history and you find out like that's how it usually works. Like they don't ever bring up anybody, they always cut everyone down. And then the punk rock influence probably more just like the attitude of it's easier to tell people like, yeah, fuck off, I'm an anarchist, than to actually have to explain any ideas.
You wanted to do both.
But yeah, right.
Maybe. Fuck off, and here's why.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's actually probably more like me. Like I don't want to say anything, but I'm gonna.
Very
But yeah,
cool.
no, I found Ron Paul, like almost everybody that I've met in the like Mises universe, whatever. Uh, I just couldn't believe that there would be somebody who was actually like taking it seriously, and then that dude would be some country doctor from the middle of nowhere in Texas. Just blew my mind. Like total Christian, social conservative, delivered all the babies in his county, like that. And but that dude's like the anarchist up on stage telling everybody that they're wrong. Like it was crazy.
It sounds like that was like Ron Paul. Was that 2008 for you or 2012 or
Yeah,
some other time?
yeah, it was 2008 for me.
2000.
I heard about Ron Paul in like 1999, and I was familiar with antiwar.com after September 11th. But his campaign in 08 was pretty fire. And then after his campaign in 2012, I started voting basically just to vote for him. But my wife told me basically I bitch too much about politics. And so if I'm going to have this many opinions, I should like be out voting and not just bitching about everything.
I thought you were gonna say something different. Like you should be out, like being active in some capacity. Like, because I'm picturing you talking about this stuff to your wife and her being like, "It's enough. I've heard enough already. You're going on. Like, go talk to somebody out in the world about it." But she's just like, "Vote." But yeah, that's that's part of it, I guess. It sounds like, you know, the late 90s and just like everything going on in your world, like a ton of seeds were planted to become this like, you know, political person and have this like Ron Paul type worldview. But it was, you know, the Ron Paul in 2008 that sort of like maybe like really cleared or specified some little, you know, the specific political issues came, you know, more in the forefront of your mind. Whereas before you're just like this kind of punk rocker who's like, I guess, somewhat anti-authority and had some run-ins and issues with public schooling. Like all these life events and seeds seemed like they were planned, and it all kind of led up to 2008. And like when you were really is that when you really started to form like a political philosophy, I guess, maybe?
So that's kind of when I tried to de-radicalize. So when I was younger too, my grandfather was a high school teacher, and I have his copies of um, like Constitution, Declaration of Independence. I have the Federalist Papers. I have the Anti-Federalist Papers. I have a Thomas Paine reader that's got common sense in it. So like I was exposed to all that, and like the idea of the American Revolution and like what it all stood for and like what all the guys were writing about. Like I got a more nuanced look into that than like you would normally get in like a history class,
Was it just from
because
gone?
I would say just because it was from somebody who was also interested in that stuff, and like since I was interested in it, like we could have long conversations about things.
That's so cool. Yeah, I guess that's what I was going to ask. Did it come from you just finding these books and reading them on your own, or were they were assigned to you? But again, it just sounds like it was this
Yeah.
organic, collaborative effort between two people who had shared some similar interests. Being you said your grandfather, was it your grandfather who worked at a
Yeah,
who was it
yeah,
who
my
was it?
grandfather and my mother were both, like I said, my everyone in my family were all big readers, so
What was your
the books were all there.
what was your grandfather's name?
Leif.
Leif. And you and him would talk about all these these books, these like that, you know, these political documents. You would read
uh,
them.
so he always said he was jack of all trades, master of none, right? My grandfather knew enough about almost every single subject that unless you were an expert, he could stump you. And like could never figure out, like he could like he would always surprise everyone because he would know which questions to ask people, I would guess. Like I was always impressed by that.
Yeah, I remember like Tom Woods has talked a little bit about like his dad like being a blue collared guy, but being very well read and being like maybe not I might be misremembering some things he said, but it seemed like he described his father in a similar way to as you're describing your grandfather, just a well-read person who's well versed in a lot of different subjects and just a regular person, regular dude, but not full of shit either when they're
Hmm.
talking about it. That's the key. The key is to not be full of shit. You can talk about something without
Exactly.
for extensively without being expert on it, but at the same time not be full of shit. Probably asking questions. Like if your whole family is all readers, they're just very curious people, and that's sort of one of the most important things in
Hmm.
life. I'm going on a tangent now, is having curiosity, because that leads to a lot of positive things. I guess that can lead to negative things too, but intellectual curiosity and curiosity about the world
Right.
and good things in it, maybe. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, no, after Ron Paul, I tried to de-radicalize because like I'd already basically found myself in the hard ANCAP uh philosophy. Uh but I didn't know anybody else who thought like that around me. So that I would try to like watch Milton Friedman or, get into some of that, read Soul and dig into some of the like guests that Rush Limbaugh would have on his talk show or whatever, and like try to find out like, okay, all these are like normal people. Like maybe I need to calm down, but like then the more I would get into that stuff and read it, I already knew what all the fallacies were that they were spouting. So like you said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because
That's
like the harder I tried to calm down, like the more radical I would get.
why did you, I guess you kind of answered because you were saying like it probably felt lonely or isolating in some regard, being the only person around or one of the few who had these views, because it seems it's very, I get, maybe not strange, but unusual that you would want to de-radicalize. It's not something you hear from people politically, no matter where on the spectrum they fall. You know what, my views, well, I think this is, I'm passionate about them. They just seem, something about them seems too radical. I need to calm down in some way.
Like in 2001 when they passed the Patriot Act, I thought it was like the end of the world. Like it was worse than 9/11. And like everyone else thought that it was, you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, or whatever fucking crazy shit. Like everyone went for it. It's like
Yeah,
COVID. Like there's so many parallels between me at 17 and me at 37, that like just the way society's going, everyone's just in lockstep. This is all okay. And like I'm like, no, none of this is okay.
because you're thinking
Uh,
ahead. You're intelligent and have foresight and are able to think ahead, whereas normies just kind of exist in the moment. I mean, and I was going to ask also, just even kind of going back to you and your grandfather, and reading all those books and all those political documents together. I mean, was that, it sounds like just that, and like a kid who's as inquisitive as you are and curious about intellectual things like that, what that in your town and your world was probably an exception, even beyond liberty minded people. Like, were there other kids who you were around who had this sort of intellectual curiosity, or was it sounds like really maybe just your family, or at least that's what you knew of in your
in
universe?
high school, I knew a dude who was an ANCOM. Um, but for the most part, anybody who was like younger, they were all George W. Bush supporters. Like it wasn't, there was no, uh, I don't know. But that was like pre 9/11 though. Like once I
Right,
was in like the first year I was in college, 9/11 happens, and then like that kind of changed everything. But then being in college too, you get exposed basically like to hard leftists, real leftists, democratic socialists, Marxists, like whatever. Even back in the day, everyone acts like it's like some new thing. But like in 2001, there were Marxists on your local community college campus too. Like
sure.
this isn't something new.
Where did
Uh,
you go to school?
but as far as like I never finished anything. I like I said, I was a bad student. I tried to go to U College, which is like the one up here, and then I tried to go to Butte College, which is up by Chico, but I just couldn't. I'd rather do it on my own. I don't know. If I wanted to read something, I'd go read it. Like I don't need to be assigned it. It's just weird.
No, there's that makes sense to me. You were going to say something else if you remember what it was. I don't know if you
I don't
remember.
know.
It's all good. So why don't we can continue on your journey after, instead of college, where did we go, and with I guess our young 20s, early adulthood. We kind of covered maybe some of your political destinations, but where were you at in the rest of your life, I guess, at that point, and where were we headed?
Um, well, I've kind of always wanted to open up a hot rod shop. Um, like that's kind of an old man's game. You got to learn a lot of stuff to get there. And so I spent my 20s basically just bouncing around from job to job, learning more skills. I watched a bunch of dudes go through trade school and pay a bunch of money. And then I found out if I just went down and applied for jobs, they would pay me to teach me how to do those jobs too. So I just went that route. And I got a welding job to try to learn how to weld. Um, and like my first welding job out of the gate was welding aluminum, which is like ridiculously difficult, at least to start out. And now I've still been doing it like 21, 22 years later. I I don't know. I just love it.
Tell me about it. What exactly is welding metal? What does that entail? And
So basically, like every single thing in your entire life, uh, all the appliances in your house, all the food processing equipment in the grocery stores, in all the restaurants, um, every trailer you've ever seen, every building that's been built, every bridge, somebody welded that shit together. And like I've been able to work on like all kinds of crazy shit just by being in the industry. Uh, well, yeah, I mean, from like up here, it's a lot of ag stuff. So like I built a lot of harvesting equipment and like food processing equipment. Um, done a lot of work for construction. Got to build race car parts, like just kind of all the way around.
Is the rewarding aspect of it just like, obviously you're putting in the time and creating these very useful and probably attractive, in some cases even, structures, but is it just in the very basic sense, completing a project or a task from start to finish and seeing something go from nothing to something just always seems to be so satisfying, in addition to being compensated for your labor, but just the idea of something, creating something from nothing, is that really one of the more
No,
satisfying
that's
things about what you
entirely
do?
it. That's entirely it. Like I take raw material and then like have a completed finished product at the end of it, and I get to do every single step all the way down the way. Um, that's something that I don't know. I can never push papers. I can never be a salesman. Like, I just don't quite have that type of drive. But the reward, like you said, the reward from completing a task is is perfect. And then like the longer I've been in it, the more intricate and more detailed the projects that I've gotten into, and also sometimes the more expensive. And then when you get something done that's been in some guy's imagination and it looks the way that he had hoped, looks and works the way that he had hoped, like that nothing beats that shit.
Very cool. Yeah, those are real things, real feelings, and real experiences that people have on a daily basis. It just makes me think, like, all the different people that I talk to on podcasts or in my personal life, like there really does seem to be this like commonality, or there really is a creative approach and a creative process, and even an artistic approach and process to, like, whether you're welding something or putting a script together or a song together. There's this like the idea, it all comes back to that idea of like taking something from, or creating something from nothing, from just someone's thought, someone's idea, really is where all these things came from. Someone had something was in someone's brain and had to
Or a
go down
feeling.
yeah, someone's feeling or someone's thought became a tangible
Hmm.
thing on a piece of paper, on a computer, and then a 3D object or a completed song or whatever. It's fascinating, these different
No, I mean,
commonalities.
sometimes it's straight utility. Like I've had to invent things, uh, like agricultural equipment, to save diesel or to save man hours or to whatever. Like that you sometimes when you're pushed to it, like you just have to come up with whatever. And then sometimes it's completely uh for the aesthetic part of it. Like I built a set of produce racks for a big grocery store, and they're all very swooping radius shapes, so that when they stack all the produce inside of it, it almost makes like a picture. And then if like the rack is satisfying looking, but then when someone has an eye for color and they're loading all of those fruits and vegetables and everything into the rack in the right patterns, like then that makes it look that much better. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just the like the feeling of it, or the.
There's so much thought and energy and that goes into all these decisions that you're describing in the marketplace, on multiple ends, on your end, on the supermarket. Like all these decisions come to, it's not, these are not accidents, and that's just like, that's fascinating, that whole, how all that comes together. And it just like reaffirms more and more the fact that like government cannot accomplish all that. Some guy in an office in a government building in a city capital or a country capital cannot have any idea how the racks in the supermarket should be angled a certain way and show it's too specialized for one person in a suit and tie at a desk to figure out. And but they continue to try to do to accomplish like that type of thing in various ways over the year with
Right.
just different types of interventions into the marketplace. Whereas like all these specialists like yourself and grocery store managers and executives are much more suited to do because it's what they do.
It's like, yeah. No, there's something to be said too. Like we in welding, not just welding, but like a lot of major construction stuff, we're completely overregulated by bureaucrats who have basically never ever been out in the field. Like not a one of them could make a thing. Not a one of them understands how a job site works. But they're the ones who make all the rules for everything that are basically like pricing all of us out. Like no one can end up competing unless you're a giant multi-state conglomerate, whatever. Like it's just crazy. And like I said, none of those people actually have the real life, the real world experience. They're just some dude in an office.
You know what I resent? I resent people who create nothing and serve no one. Those are that's what I resent.
Seriously.
And those types of people and those types of positions seem to exist in a certain, or more often than not, find themselves in a certain organization, or very close to it. That would be the government. But yeah,
or an
that's
organization that wouldn't exist if it weren't for the
for
other
government.
organization.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
100%. So you said you got married in your mid-20s and you got kids too, right?
Yeah. When I was 30, we had twins.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're badass.
They're
No, I always tell everybody I don't have any friends, so I had to grow some. You know.
There you go. Well, you have 3 friends, your wife and 2 kids, so that's 3
Right.
right there. You're
And a
identical.
dog, man.
And a dog. You got the
Yeah, I'm
American
set.
dream. You don't need to make America great again. Just like you got
Right.
set up. And also,
No, we got it going on, man.
yeah, if when the apocalypse or whatever, some bullshit goes down, I'm going to you. Tell you that much. Like you're gonna like be like, so here's how we're gonna grow our own food and whatever. You give me you tell me like whatever I need to do. I'll go down to the river and carry the buckets of water or whatever. You tell me what you need.
We can make it work.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll make myself useful. I've been to 24-hour fitness this century, so I can lift I can lift something. But that's great. Congratulations on like just having a great family, like your immediate family, extended family. It sounds like that's super cool. How old are your twins?
So they're 8 now. I have a boy and a girl. They're not identical, obviously. It's a boy and a girl, but they are they've been raised as similarly as I possibly could out of necessity, not because like I was trying to do anything, but like when you have 2 kids, like everybody's playing with the same toys, everybody's eating the same food, like everybody's doing the same thing. Like we didn't really have the ability to completely cater to the kids like you would if you only had one at a time.
Sure, that
And
makes sense.
they still ended up being as opposite as humanly possible.
Wow.
My boy is the dirtiest boy that plays sports and laser tag and superheroes and spies and ninjas and whatever. And then my daughter dresses up and does princess stuff and has stuffed animals and the whole, like they're just completely opposite of each other. It's crazy.
Although in my head and sane people's heads, that sounds like pretty normal. I don't know if that's opposite.
Right?
I don't know if that's opposite, but it just seems like maybe stereotypical gender rolled kids, which it almost seems like it has a negative connotation in 2022.
Right.
Like
to
certain people.
I just put it out like that because it kind of knocks the nurture argument down a little bit. Like both my kids fish, both my kids hunt, they both pass their hunter safety. Like they're both of them will camp, both of them like being outside. Both of them ride bikes, both of them ride skateboards. Like I said, like I didn't give them the chance to not do whatever we were doing in the family. But they still are very feminine and very masculine.
Yeah.
Like that nature does play a much bigger role than a lot of people want to try to admit that it does.
Yeah, it seems like they went in, like you gave them a similar shared upbringing in a lot of regards, but also gave them enough freedom to I say get like they're adults, but like are giving them enough freedom to pursue what they like and want to pursue, so long as it's, I guess, healthy for their being and all that. That's good stuff all around. Tell me about I guess what you've been up to for the last, I mean, like few years beyond the welding job. You can tell me about the political stuff. I know you're writing now. I'll kind of let you steer the ship and kind of catch me up. I guess between like '08 and the present, we could kind of like I don't know, go from there. Obviously,
So
your kids were
uh,
born in 2014 because I'm good at math. You see, ish
yeah,
around then, but kind of continue your journey.
yeah, no, so my basically like I said, music had always been like such a big deal that I just once I started playing music and realizing like how much I liked playing music, especially like around people, I didn't necessarily want everyone to like stop and stare at me or whatever, but if I could be the stereo in the background of a party while everyone's, being loud and carrying on or whatever, like that was like a good spot. Uh
I
and then
feel
I
that.
started writing songs, and I got hooked up with a dude who was just graduated from college to be a recording engineer, and had it set up in his garage, and I went and recorded my first songs with him, and then it just took off. Like I did open mic nights, and then I started playing in bars, and then for a minute I had a band. I put out a couple of albums, not albums, but like EPs. Um, and then COVID hit, and then nobody had live music anywhere, and all the guitar players that I know all got real jobs, and it's been rough. But it looks like things are finally starting to open back up here. Uh, the city of Sacramento is a little rough, but the outlying areas have all been opening up over this like since this summer basically.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question, or what I was going to kind of ask about is some of the politics and where you are. But it makes sense that would probably be a little bit more left and more strict on the their COVID policies or in and around Sacramento versus more on the outskirts and perhaps more rural areas where it's obviously a little bit more laid back and probably conservative too, I would guess.
Yeah. Pretty much all the rural areas around Sacramento, except where I live, are conservative leaning. We have UC Davis in Davis, like which is 7 miles away from Woodland, and the the progressive influence of the university is felt all the way through the county. Like we have a very progressive, uh, very Democrat voting bloc uh, area around here.
The
Even though
college
we're
town.
even though we're rural, and even though we're ag based, uh, the politics are not rural or ag based.
Why is that? Is that just because the college is such it sucks up such a high
That's the only
percentage?
thing I can think of.
It sucks up such a high percentage of the population, and some of the people who go to the school may stick around or something like that, and so does their politics. Is that what it is? They just have the numbers essentially in a lot of ways.
I I think that coupled with uh like wealthier middle class college educated people tend to lean progressive in California like automatically, it seems like. And so since we have since our population is based around the college, I would say probably more people than not are college educated, so they probably have a lot of those political leanings based off that. There's a couple of like uh old school bleeding heart hippies and stuff around here too, which is cool. But like there's a lot of uh let's say like Bernie Sanders type progressives in this area.
Sounds like there's some political diversity in the area, for better or
Yeah,
worse, I guess.
yeah, a little bit.
Hmm. And what about
Um,
your political stuff? How did you get involved with the Libertarian Party and the Mises Caucus and all that? And how did that all sort of come together? Some, I guess, after 2008, Ron Paul, like maybe one thing leads to another after the years. Kind of like myself a little bit.
well, I never knew what a libertarian was. Like I had read uh like now looking back stuff that was like big L libertarian. Like I was aware of Harry Brown. I had read some of his stuff. I was aware of antiwar.com. Um I just never knew that it was a thing. And then after Ron Paul ran in 2012, uh it was like, okay, here's a group of people that at least think the way that I think, like 90, 95%. Like I think when I did that was when the I side with polls stuff started coming out. And it was like I matched with Gary Johnson like 98% or whatever. And it was like, okay, if Ron Paul didn't make it through, at least I could at least I could back something else that's close. Um, but then I got to like know the party, and it was such a shit show that I didn't want to get actually involved. Um, and then in 2016, uh, the Radical Caucus in the LP with like Karen Ann Harlos, and they were like starting to pick up steam. Or that might have been before then, I don't know. But it seemed like that was going to actually do something. And I'd heard Heiss talk about the Mises Caucus on Tom Woods. And then he started talking about the decriminalization of mushrooms and decriminalization of weed, and how he was getting that stuff done in like fucking Pennsylvania or some shit, like the middle of nowhere. But he's just working with the cops to make it happen. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, if dude could just literally walk up to the city and be like, let's not bust people for pot anymore, and they just go for it, and that's all you have to do. Like, we need that. Like, I want to be on that guy's team. And like I said, I didn't know how serious the Mises stuff was gonna go. Uh, so like I was like supporting the LP sort of, but not really. Uh, and then uh, Matthew Butts got my phone number, and once Matthew Butts has your phone number, he will contact you until you join.
Yeah, another California-based libertarian activist,
Uh,
dude who's involved in the party and the Mises Caucus, all there. As you're referring to Michael Heiss, of course, before
yeah,
founder of the Mises the Caucus,
of the Mises.
which is was originally created, I guess, was it 2017 or 18? Not all that long ago. To give people, listeners, a little bit of a timeline where we're
Yeah,
at.
no, this has all happened fast.
Right.
Um,
I'm kind of right there with you. My journey and path is fairly similar from 2012 Ron Paul up until like just kind of paying attention to the party, kind of in and out of the LP here and there. I don't like it this year. I like it this year. I figure what the hell I'll support, but never really being super duper involved and engaged. Over the years until more recently, of course, with Heiss and the Mises Caucus taking over the party and trying to get it back to more of those Ron Paul principles and values. And to listen to us talk about Ron Paul, throughout this podcast, it's easy for people who are not engaged in this moment to think of us as like Paul bots or something like that. But whatever, it is what it is. Because like I do find it hard to disagree with the guy on issues, and like because the thing about libertarians and us is like we do take all the issues seriously. We do think about things. We do think about the consequences of our positions. So like whether it's Ron Paul or someone else who's might be sharing a thought or a position, we give it thoughts. And if the guy's right, the guy's right. And at the very least, the guy's definitely honest and not bought and sold and paid for. So let the haters say what they will in response to that. But figured I'd get that off my chest.
Well, I would say it's one of those deals where like people get drawn together from some like a good live band. If you go and you see a band play and live, they have it going on. Like not what's recorded, not on the album, but like actually like physically in person, you can tell if they're full of shit or not. Ron Paul was like a political rock star like that, like a philosophical rock star. Like you could just tell he wasn't full of shit. I think we've already covered that before. You want people to trust you, you want people to believe you, just don't be full of shit. Uh, but like all of us it's not necessarily that we all fanboy over him. Uh, it's just amazing to me that like all of us have found a connection together through some old ass man. Like that just happened, like just because he ran for president, like now all of us have all finally found each other. And I mean, it took 10 years, but like it's crazy. There's a lot of us out there that, I mean, Ron Paul kind of changed it.
Yeah, and the great thing about the Mises Caucus, especially, is, at least in my opinion, is like after Ron Paul's presidential runs in 2012, the energy, the spirit, and even the principles too, of course, like that sort of was brushed aside for various reasons, other political candidates and issue, and just Ron Paul himself just not being as much in the public eye. When you're running for president, obviously you are, but
Right.
with the Mises Caucus, I think, at least we have principles to guide us, and Ron Paul's influence in the caucus, and we have a sustainable thing. Like it's the sustainability that I think is so cool this go around.
No, I agree. It won't just end after an election cycle. And if we can all keep going together, then that means that the LP itself won't just end every election cycle. Like we might actually be able to turn this into something
Right.
other than just, I mean, it's always been a protest vote, but what if we
Sure.
could make it into something more than a protest vote? Even if we're not winning elections, Ron Paul didn't win, but he woke everyone up.
Right.
So even if we can get to a point where, okay, well, we're not going to win, but if we can rattle the cage, I mean, at least we're finally doing something.
Right.
Like,
And I mean, I really appreciate and support the whole concept of the Mises Caucus, and I guess the LP now is part of that too. Is that just the idea, like on the national level, we're going to focus on messaging and getting people's attention, rattling the cage and pushing the envelope and the Overton window and all these things on the issues that we care about, and at the same time running candidates at local levels, like school boards and city councils, and maybe even higher than that, trying to influence things on a local level and gain control of people, our political destinies, on that front. And also just issue
we have
coalitions.
a
One more thing,
we have a oh yeah, yeah.
I was going to say the issue coalitions is the third prong. The third part of it is like building
Hmm.
issue, where do we agree with Democrats, Republicans, anyone? Like what issues can we work together with other people on? So I think those three things it's a great approach. But what were you going to say?
I was gonna say we have a Mises Caucus guy from California who moved to New Hampshire, and now that he's in New Hampshire, he's running for sheriff. And he's legit.
Yeah, Ben Weir. You're talking
Uh,
about Ben, aren't you?
yeah,
Very cool. Yeah.
yeah, emo for sheriff.
Oh, is that
But
a good thing? I guess so.
yeah, he owns it.
Yeah. No, I know.
But no, it's like everyone like you said, when it comes to local office, another California guy, our friend Kelly Carden ran for county supervisor during the primary, but because the way the primary rules work, the incumbent ended up just taking the office. But he is on his town council now. So like we're starting to get everybody into spots, like you said, the small local real local, real decentralized spots, and try to start making decisions specifically in our own towns, and then use the statewide or use the nationwide spots just to draw attention to ourselves.
Right. And like, even if Kelly or others don't necessarily even win win all their elections and win all these positions, like those campaigns, I'm sure, just amazing experiences, to learning experiences, and also obviously networking and meeting people and getting yourself out there. And like,
Right.
I mean, I would hope not. And I would think it's not wasted time at all. It's just like, again, part of that, like, taking something from nothing. Like Kelly, maybe I was just a guy doing something else completely different from politics, not even involved years ago, and now I'm on my, what did you say, school board, city council or something? He's on
Yeah, he's on town council. Yeah,
town
no,
council. Yeah.
he was a dude at his town who was pissed that they were going to raise his water rates, I think, again.
Yes,
Like it
I
was just
remember
it.
some of the
He was
water.
like,
Yeah.
I'm just done.
I love it. Why don't you tell me more about, like, what are your all position? What are your positions with the LP Mises Caucus? I know you do some writing. You can tell me about your specific roles if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah. No, so like I said, I've always been a reader and a writer. Um, and I was a songwriter for a while. It's like still a songwriter, whatever. But like I never focused on anything outside of songwriting. Uh, then once I started getting involved with the LP, I started writing like pieces to go into different state parties newsletters, and then I started writing resolutions. One, I wrote a an anti-vaccine mandate resolution that didn't get passed in California, but it got passed in like a dozen other states and counties. Uh, Go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask, was the resolution essentially the speech that you gave on that I watched? Yeah, that I should link people to, or tell them to
Oh
see that. Is
no,
that
no.
because you gave
It
a
was
great
like,
speech at a school board meeting,
yeah, last
refuting
year.
vaccine mandates. Was very passionate and emotional. And went viral. People should
It,
definitely check that. It was like October 2021 or something like that.
yeah.
But I thought maybe
Um,
that was like your speech was like the transcript of your resolution or something like that.
the speech was when I finally realized that I was onto something. So like I started writing, like I said, like newsletter articles or whatever, and then I got a Substack, and I was trying to compile my thoughts into as short as I possibly could, which is still like 700 or 800 words because I don't know how to write short.
That's not too
Um,
many though. Is that 700, 800? That's like a couple of pages, right? It's not like a
that's
five.
right, right.
It's
No,
not.
but I could write thousands. That's my whole problem. It's like try to distill an idea down just to have one thought and not my 10,000 thoughts that I need to write all of them down. And then for the LP, I contribute for the California State newsletter, and some of the other states have published some of my stuff. I've been published by Scott Horton's Libertarian Institute. I've been published by the Mises Caucus. I've been public. I've written a few articles for some candidates, candidate statements, and some speeches. That was something else that was cool, was writing a speech for somebody and then watching the video of them giving the speech. Like that was wicked.
Who did you write for? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I wrote for Kelly a little bit.
Oh, that's cool.
But you don't need to help. Yeah, I mean, he didn't need any help. Him and I would just basically sit down on the phone and
Yeah.
try to flesh out his ideas. That dude is such a good storyteller that all I'd have to do would basically be to help get him focused. And like once he was focused on a topic, man, that guy can just go.
It's funny
I
how we
was
can give each other feedback. You can edit him, and he can help edit, or you. But otherwise you guys would be me. It's hard to, like, yeah, be objective about yourself, or like see outside. I guess that's the same thing,
well,
kind of thing.
it got to the point where like I spent so much time talking to him on the phone that I could like think in his voice. You know what I mean? Like I could write in the way that he talks. So I don't know. It was odd because it was like like I said, I had Kelly's voice in my head while I'm trying to type out something. But that, I mean, it's just handy to be that familiar with. And like Kelly's another dude. I didn't meet him until he was the first person that I met when I got to my first California state LP convention.
Was I there? Was that one of the ones I was at?
I don't. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Uh,
It
the
was
one
Visalia.
in
Yeah,
Visalia.
yeah, yeah. That's when I first
Yeah,
met
yeah,
Kelly too, and a lot of you guys. Very
yeah.
cool.
I think a bunch of us, that was all of our first ones,
Yeah.
and a bunch of us are still super involved, which is cool.
That was the first one we were kind of representing the Mises Caucus. I think there's something.
Right.
I think that's a big part of it too. Certainly.
Uh,
Cool. So we got the Substack, and you're involved in the LP. Sounds like locally in California, and you were at national and all that stuff. So you got your hands in all different kinds of areas within the political world and the party.
it's been an experience, that's for sure.
I
There's been a lot
gather.
of it's like I said, it's one of those fucking weird things where uh in Reno, I was with 1,000 other people that I agree with on almost everything. Now, I've never been anywhere where I agree with even like a handful of people.
On a
Like,
handful
let
of
alone,
things.
yeah, right. Let alone an entire room full of people on almost all subject matter. Like,
We
it was
found
just
we found
crazy.
things to disagree about, though.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But like our disagreements, to a normie, they wouldn't even understand the nuance of why we're upset at each other, because like we're almost all saying the same thing. Just I don't like I don't like how you said that. I want it to be this way. Like, I don't know. It's
Parliamentary
almost all
procedural stuff.
superficial. Hmm.
In some regards, certainly, for sure. Um, I appreciate all the stories and the time. I feel like I've taken up too much of it already. I want to ask you a couple more questions because I want to try to remember to ask all my guests this because it's an interesting. I think those are interesting questions to ask. Um, what are your thoughts on ghosts and aliens, and have you had any personal experiences with either of those, or like UFOs or anything like that?
All right, so I think that both of those things are stupid.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
no, no. Also, uh, I, I I don't I don't see how the I don't see how the kinetic energy that from a person dying just randomly disappears and doesn't go somewhere either. So I could kind of get some spiritual energy, woo woo shit, like it's been explained fairly well to me that that might be at least plausible. But I have seen potentially a ghost. We were walking along a beach, and a woman dressed like from like the early 1900s was on one side of the dunes, and when we walked over there she was gone, and no one saw any other people there, no footprints, no nothing like that. So uh I would say it's at least pot- there might be some potential there, but like I said, I the concept seems kind of dumb to me to
Yeah.
want it to be a
That's why you saw that lady, because
not
you're
that it's because I'm a skeptic, right?
yeah, that's what I was gonna
Uh,
say. You got it. That's why I
but
don't get
like
haunted.
aliens too, yeah, right.
'Cause I'm afraid of the
But
ghosts.
like
So they're
aliens too, I want there to be aliens. I was like the biggest X-Files fan when I was a kid. Like, I want nothing more than all that shit to be real. Uh, but I don't necessarily know. Like, I'm sure that there are aliens somewhere in the vast, infinite galaxies. But I don't necessarily think that we were gonna run into any of them.
yeah.
It would be nice,
Yeah, we
but
would hope it would be
we're
nice.
right. Well, yeah, we'd hope it'd be nice. But no, like I don't know. The universe is too big for like that to happen so close to itself, I would think. Unless maybe we're in like a good spot in the universe where life actually does get to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
I
there
don't
might be
know.
just one planet like ours in like every solar system or galaxy or something like that that happens to be the right conditions for life. But why is this the right conditions for life? Like this temperature and whatever. It could be conditions for some other beings beyond, you know,
Right.
what we can even conceive of in some other universe. But on that note, again, thank you. I appreciate it. Where can people find and follow you? I'll let you give those plugs and or talk about anything else you want to mention or forgot or before we part ways. I'll give you the floor to kind of do those things.
All right. If you like really shitty garage made country music, I'm on Spotify and Apple Music and all that shit. My name's Zach Kincaid. Uh, you want to read some of my writing? I'm zachkincaid.substack.com. I'm on Twitter at Backyard Anarchy. And if you're interested in the Libertarian Party or wanting to discuss the ideas of actual freedom, uh, and I mean, like economics, just philosophy, the idea of liberty, reach out to me. If you're from California, reach out to me. If you're from somewhere else in the country, go to takehumanaction.com.
I appreciate that. That was a good sales pitch. And you said you're like, oh, I don't get sales. I don't understand sales or whatever. That's not my field. But like you did a good job right there. You're like, hey, if you're interested in XYZ and you want to talk more about, you did recruiting. Did a good job there recruiting. Again, thank you. I appreciate it, Zach, and I'm sure we'll talk more soon. I'll let you get on with the rest of your evening.
Perfect. Thank you, man.
Oh, you got it later. So there you have it, episode 132, and my conversation with Zach Kincaid. What a smart, well-rounded dude that guy is. I really, again, appreciate Zach's time and all the stories. I like all the grandparents and the great-grandparents stuff, especially. That's meaningful to me. But for everything about this show, of course, head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's at People We Love Podcast on Instagram. I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter if you want to follow me, at Tedeschi Trucks Podcast for my other podcast about the band, theeditedmovie.com. Just check out my short, The Edited. That's theeditedmovie.com. But I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.